Going to pass over the reins of the waiting room to Kelly to keep watching for folks. And thank you all for joining us today. It is, what is this today? This is the 8th of April already. My name is Erin Larandos. I'm the Digital Equity Program Manager here in the State Broadband Office. And today we're going to have the second of two conversations going over our Digital Equity Subgrant program. This session will be recorded and we'll be tracking all of the questions that are asked and answered during this session to ensure that we can share it on our website so that everyone has access to the same information as they move into their potential subgrant applications. And I'm going to make sure my chat is up so I see any of those questions that come in. So joining me today, I do have a couple other folks from the broadband office just to acknowledge that they're here with us. Kelly and Oksana, would you like to say hi briefly?
Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly Crucy. I am the Community Engagement Manager for the Broadband Office. Thanks for joining us. We've got a great amount of people who are here to hear exciting information from Erin. So thanks for being here. And definitely use the chat today if you've got any questions. And Erin will get into the details of that, but we'll be keeping an eye on that as she progresses.
Oksana, would you like to say hi?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Oksana Beatty, Tribal Liaison with Arizona Commerce Authority. I'm happy to be here, and I'm excited for you all to learn about digital equity from Erin.
Thanks so much, both of you. And just to acknowledge, we do have almost 60 folks with us in the room, so it's fantastic. Thank you so much. As a reminder for folks who maybe have joined since I said this session is being recorded, and we will track all of the questions and answers and post those on our website as well. So how we're going to operate today is I'll start with a brief overview of the subgrant program using a little bit of a PowerPoint here, and then we will go through the requirements for the subgrant application. Before I do that, I do want to make sure my screens are all in the right spot. Look at that, they are. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And for folks who maybe joined us last month, as a reminder, the content of this session will be the same as last month, but we will, of course, track any new questions that we get on today's conversation. And to that end, we do want it to be a conversation. So feel free to, pop your hand up or acknowledge in the chat if you would like to ask a question out loud, or as Kelly mentioned, feel free to use the chat to ask questions throughout this presentation. All right. So now you should be seeing my screen. So welcome officially to the Digital Equity Subgrant Program overview. It is April 8th, and the first one was back in March, as I mentioned. Let's go ahead to the next screen. Okay, so first of all, I just want to acknowledge for folks who maybe haven't seen our new website. A few months back, Governor Hobbs did announce a Connect All AZ initiative to kind of bring together all of the various broadband infrastructure expansion and digital equity efforts here in Arizona. And so we got a brand new website when that happened. So if you go to our old website, which is azcommerce.com/broadband, it will redirect you to connectallaz.com. You can go either one and it'll take you to this page that you see up here on the screen. I'm actually going to do this part live so that you can see this. Let's see here. Go ahead and share my screen again. There we go. So this is the website in the live version. And when you see this landing page, you'll see mostly BEAD related information on here. So to get to the digital equity pieces that we'll be discussing today, you can mouse over and click on the initiatives tab up here at the top, and then click into the digital equity program. Feel free to explore all of the other amazing programs that our office is administering as well.
Erin,
And you're not
we
seeing the
are,
screen. I just
yeah.
saw that. Let me try that again.
That was just practice.
It was practice. How about now? Can you see it now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so ignore the people behind the curtain here. What I did while you couldn't see my screen was click on the word initiatives up at the top here, and then click into the digital equity program. So this is going to be your main page for everything related to both the subgrants and also the efforts as they progress throughout the 5-year implementation of our digital equity plan. So here you'll be able to see a brief timeline of the work that has happened, as well as our anticipated next steps. And then using these tabs across the top here, you can click right into a space to download the full digital equity plan. You might have seen this page when you registered for today's session. Upcoming conversations and webinars will always be posted here. And below that, you can click into the previous webinars to watch the recordings. If you go into one of the previous roundtables, for example, you'll also have a link to the questions and answers from that session. So you'll see a new one for today's shortly. And then the last tab here is very important for folks who are interested in applying for subgrants. The General Capacity Subgrant Program tab is where you're going to go for all of the information related to the actual application. And we're going to go through the details of this throughout today's session, of course, but I just wanted to point out where you'll see that. Additionally, in addition to the application itself and the information about how to submit your application, you'll also see resources links down here to the original Notice of Funding Opportunity, or NOFO. This is what the state is responding to with our digital equity plan. This is where our funding is coming from. But it's very important for subgrantees to be aware of the requirements that we're being held to by the federal government. So we've linked that here. And then, of course, another link to our digital equity plan for the state of Arizona. I'm going to go ahead and go back to our PowerPoint here. And see, this time magically I didn't turn off the share, so you can all still see everything. All right, so very briefly, I do want to go over the timeline. This is pulled right from the website that you just saw. A couple of important things to note on here, and then our anticipated next steps as well. So first of all, last year at the beginning of April is when our state's digital equity plan was approved. So it has just celebrated its first birthday, which is pretty exciting. And this really made us eligible as a state to apply for the funding that we're now going to be making available through the subgrants and what will really be used for our implementation of the plan. So we applied for our capacity grants at the state last May, and we were awarded that funding in the middle of December of 2024. Our period of performance for this work kicked off on January 1st, and again, that's a 5-year implementation for us as a state to implement what we said we wanted to do in our digital equity plan. Our major way to implement is to provide subgrants to organizations and entities across the state that are already doing this amazing work in the digital equity and inclusion ecosystem. And so by that end, we are in the middle of our subgrantee prep right now, and then we will open our window of application on May 1st. The applications will be due by the end of June. And then at that point, we will prepare our final list of recommended awards, and we have to send all of that information back to the federal government for a final check before we're able to actually have access to that funding or provide it to our subgrantees. So that's really important for folks to recognize that when we turn this in by the end of September, the federal government may take some time at that time to to go over our plan again and make sure that both all the funding is being utilized, but also that all of the goals and objectives in our plan are being met. So I just want to take a moment to remind folks what this digital equity plan is all about and who it is meant to serve. So when we wrote our digital equity plan, we were given this information by the federal government to ensure that these covered populations that have historically been disproportionately impacted by digital equity have ways to break down those barriers through our plan. So these groups of people include individuals who live in covered households, which is another way of saying low income individuals. Also aging individuals, incarcerated individuals, veterans, individuals with disabilities, individuals with language barriers, including those who are English language learners and have low levels of literacy generally, individuals who are members of racial or ethnic minority groups, and individuals who primarily reside in rural areas. When we looked at this list and thought about the community of Arizona and who we know, lives here, we also kind of made some additions to this list to ensure that our entire community is being recognized. The first one is that definition of incarcerated individuals here in Arizona. We expanded that to include folks who have been formerly incarcerated and who have gone through reentry programs or are currently going through reentry programs. We acknowledge that, the barriers that folks face if they have experienced incarceration don't necessarily end when they are released. And so we wanted to acknowledge that. Another main change that we made or addition to ensure that all of Arizona is being recognized in this plan is that we added specific goals and objectives around our tribal communities. That was very important to us here in our plan. So you'll see that reflected when you read through the goals and objectives. But overall, the important thing to keep in mind here is when you're looking at that list, more than 80% of people who live in Arizona fall into one or more of these covered populations. So when we look at the barriers that are faced by the people who are within those groups and we try to identify ways to break down those barriers, we really are helping everyone here in Arizona. And that's a very important thing to keep in mind as we move through this work. So our digital equity plan includes 5 main overarching goals, and each of these goals have a number of objectives within them. And these are the things that we came up with while we were doing our research and writing the plan that we felt would be the most effective to break down those barriers. So these include the overarching goals of internet cost and stability, the inclusivity of resources, digital literacy upskilling opportunities, privacy and security, and device access. And so when you review the subgrant program, you'll notice that the goals that are open for subgrants reflect these as well, but not all of them. And we'll go into that detail in a little bit here. All right. So as I mentioned, the main way that we're implementing our plan is by providing subgrants. Our total award for capacity funding here in Arizona was just over $16 million. That is, again, to fund the 5-year implementation of the digital equity plan. And it also helps us have funding to basically run the digital equity plan. So not all of the 16 million is available for subgrants. It also goes to things like administration of the grants, evaluation of the programs, and also updating our plan as we move through that implementation. We did create our request for proposals for the subgrant process, and that was posted on the ACA's website. Actually prior to the 1st of March, but definitely by the 1st of March. And we did that intentionally. We recognized that a number of organizations who might be interested in receiving funding through us might have their own long runways to apply for an application or to apply for a grant or other processes that would require a little bit of leeway time there. And so again, we wanted to make sure that the information was posted well in advance of the window. The applications will be accepted May 1st through June 30th, as I mentioned, and then once that window closes, all of the applications will be reviewed together. So we're not looking at them during that window being open. We'll review everything at the same time at the end. So take the time you need is the important piece there. And within each goal and objective, applications that address that goal and objective will be reviewed against others that respond to that same goal. So, for example, if you're considering digital literacy programming for your community, your application wouldn't be put up against an application for device access, for example.
Erin, you've got a couple of questions stacking
Oh,
up in the chat that I'll bring up now as you're transitioning slides.
all right, go for it. I can't actually see them right now, so.
Okay. All right. Well, the first one goes back to the Q&A. So are you aggregating the Q&A into one document, or do we need to look at each session?
That's a great question. So the way that we addressed that was by session. So you'll see the answers and the questions from the first session within that first session's link. And I can show this live as well in a moment. And then today's will be under today's recording. So thank you for asking that. I appreciate it. And I did find the Q&A, so I am happy to read them out loud if that's easier. So the second question is this funding at risk? And that is, and I see a second one as well related to that. So that's a really great question. And at this time, we have no indication that we won't receive this funding. However, you know, with the changes at the federal level that we are seeing, it is important to acknowledge that you know, we don't have this funding in our bank account right now, and since we do have to you know, send all of this information back to the federal government one more time for one final approval before we have access to draw down those funds. We anticipate having this funding available, but until that final check happens, things could change. So at this point, we are operating as if there won't be changes. However, if there are, we will address those if and when they happen. So at this point, that's the information that I can provide to those questions. Let me know if you have any follow-ups, though. The next question here says, when ACA goes to the federal government in September with a list of approved subgrantees, does the Fed additionally review each subgrant proposal, or do they trust ACA and their decisions for choosing subgrantees? In short, does the Fed review individual proposals as well as ACA? And no, they do not. So basically, we review all of the applications that we receive. You know, to our standards, and that panel that has been pulled together to review will, you know, come to a list of recommended awards. At that point, we translate that into project name, dollar amount, who it's going to serve, and a few other pieces of information, and send that back to the federal government. So they do not see the actual application, and the relationship between the subgrantee and ACA is that. So no, to answer shortly, they do not see your application, but they will see the project, the outcomes, how many people you plan to serve, and the dollar amounts that are attached to each project. Okay. Next question. Oh, yes. So this person is just asking for a copy of the PowerPoint. It will be posted along with the questions and answers on our website shortly. And everyone who's registered for this session, I will let you know when that gets posted as well. Okay. All right. So I think that's everything that was in there except for my error in not sharing my screen earlier. So let me know if there's more questions as we go, but I'll continue going through the information now. And this next screen that you see up right now kind of goes over a few of the things I just mentioned, that once the potential subgrantees have been identified, we do send that information back to NTIA, that's the federal government, the National Telecommunications Information Administration, for a final approval. And final determinations and actual fund availability will be subject to those federal approvals, in so much as if you know, any changes are made, it could change the dollar amount that we have available, or what we're able to do. But at this time, we don't have any indication that there will be major changes. All right. So we have established a new email address to accept the applications and questions during the application window. So you have all been very used to emailing me directly for any digital equity related conversations or questions, and that's perfectly fine. We encourage that. But if you have a question during the application window being open, so May 1st through June 30th, we ask that you use this email address. It will be monitored by our procurement team, and questions that come in, during that time, again, will be tracked and addressed. So during that window, we do ask that applications and questions go to digitalequity@azcommerce.com. And really, this just keeps the process, fair and transparent. The review team doesn't have access to that information during the window being open, so we like to keep that piece separate. Okay. Just noticed a new question. Okay, so you mentioned the RFP being announced on March 1st. Does this grant require an intent to apply to be submitted? No, it does not. So we just wanted to share the information as early in advance of the window being open as possible, because we heard from a number of our potential applicants and stakeholders across the state that it would take them 2 months to get approval to apply. And so we wanted to make sure that that window was built into the process. So no, we do not need a letter of intent or anything prior to the application. We just wanted to make sure to share early. Thank you for that question. Okay, so now let's dive into the nitty-gritty a little bit of the application. All of the information on the next few slides here is pulled directly from the application, which again, you can download through our website as one document. And so if you're looking for that piece to save onto your own computer, you don't have to copy down what you're seeing on the screen here. It's all included in that application. So first of all, eligible entities that are available to, or pardon me, encouraged to respond to this grant. The details, again, are found on the website. Eligible entities do include municipal, county, and regional governments and their community anchor institutions. And that's a term that is related both to the infrastructure investments and the digital equity side of things. These are locations within a community that facilitate the access or use of the internet. So think about our schools, our healthcare facilities, our libraries, our places where people go to use the internet and to learn how to use the internet if they don't already have that information. Additionally, tribal governments and tribal-led entities are eligible to apply. Community-based organizations, nonprofits and foundations, institutions of higher education, and state agencies and institutions. We also encourage partnerships between these types of entities. If they're interested in working together to propose a plan, then we would like them to apply together. And as I mentioned earlier, applicants are compared only to other applications responding to that same activity or category. And so you'll be reviewed within a goal or an objective as opposed to across the board. Subgrantees should be based in Arizona. Partnerships, again, that extend the reach of the services will be given funding priority when we review the applications. If we, see an application that covers, a wide geographic area, or utilizing those partnerships to basically extend the efficacy of the project, those will be given appropriate scoring priority. Proposed projects and programs need to focus on the covered populations. So again, that list of people who have historically been on the wrong side of the digital divide. They should also foster long-lasting and meaningful change. They should include measurable implementation strategies. We encourage you to refer to the key performance indicators, or KPIs, in our digital equity plan for what those measurable implementation strategies might be. And then we also encourage you to take in stakeholder engagement into your activities. So make sure you're talking to the community that you're going to serve, This is, talking about how do we share these services with the community? How do we get their feedback throughout the process, etc. All right. Subgrants will be made in accordance with the application, but will likely be within the range of $25,000 to $250,000 per grant to ensure equity and to spread the award's impact throughout the state. A note on that one, because I have gotten some questions about that over this period. If your program or project requires more than $250,000, please ask for more. We just want to ensure that we can spread the money out both across the covered populations and also across the state. So this is our anticipated range. But if your project requires $500,000, even $1 million, please ask for it. It just might be that when we recommend that award, we might say, we really like this project or program. Would you be able to do it for $500,000 instead of $600,000, let's say? I do see some new questions. I just want to pause for a moment here. Okay, so if an application is a partnership between one or more organizations, does that increase the potential ask beyond the $250,000 limit? Can two applicants partnership apply for 500,000, 3, etc. Again, I would encourage you to ask for what the project requires, and then we will evaluate that as part of the review. Yep, same wavelength, exactly. Okay. Next question, does the budget must cover the full 5-year period and plan, correct? So no, not necessarily. Our implementation period is 5 years at the ACA level, at the statewide level. But we are, we recognize that this isn't a ton of money and it might not be enough to run a project or program for an individual organization for 5 years. So we are also encouraging, shorter projects that might prove out, a way to apply for future funding. The $16 million that we are looking at this time for this application is hopefully the first of 3 separate pots of money that the state will receive to implement our plans. So we are hoping that there will be future funding opportunities available. So individual projects or programs do not need to cover the whole 5 years, okay? Matching funds or in-kind required? No, there is no match requirement. There's no in-kind requirement. That will come out in your application, of course. For example, if a person who works at a community anchored institution is providing digital literacy classes, it might not be the only thing that they do. So, the time that they use for this project would be, counted, but we wouldn't necessarily we're not requiring any additional in-kind or matching funds. And I guess I jumped ahead a little bit here. The additional funding may be available in the future with subsequent NOFOs and other funding opportunities that may be identified throughout implementation. Last year, around this time, is when we saw the notice of funding opportunity for this funding that we're talking about right now. So we had initially anticipated that we would see that second NOFO around this time, but with the changes at the federal level, we have not yet seen the second NOFO. We are hopeful that we will see it, though, once key personnel at NTIA are confirmed, we hope that we have opportunity to apply for more funding. All right. So I'm going to pause here just momentarily to make sure that there aren't any additional questions. Maybe folks are thinking about typing. The next part of the presentation goes into the goals and objectives that are being addressed by this subgrant. And so I just want to make sure that there aren't any questions about eligibility or anything else first. Okay. Seeing nothing new pop in, I'll continue on, but please continue to ask questions as we go. All right. So as I mentioned, the overall digital equity plan did consist of 5 overarching goals and a number of objectives within those goals. However, due to the timelines of the process and a few other factors, not all of the goals that are listed in the plan are open for subgrant at this time. So during this next section here, we're going to go over the ones that are. So for example, goal number 1 addresses the low-cost internet availability and really making sure that folks know about the infrastructure investments. And since the BEAD program is still in its early stages of implementation as well, we are not addressing this goal at this time. Again, if there are future rounds of funding and timelines allow for that, we will be opening parts of that goal up. But at this time, it is not included. The second goal of increasing inclusivity and accessibility of public resources. This one really addresses the fact that digital equity is not only about access, but also ensuring that digital tools are inclusive and accessible. Our plan advocates for supporting nonprofits and community anchor institutions in delivering tailored digital literacy skills programs and emphasizes the importance of accessible devices and technologies, partnering with workforce agencies to make job application processes more accessible, investing in library resources, etc. And we considered a novel aspect of this goal is understanding and integrating the perspective of tribes and viewing language and cultural preservations through digital equity lens, thereby respecting and embracing Arizona's rich cultural diversity. So the objectives within this goal that will be considered for subgrants include making online spaces and content more accessible. So this could refer to updating websites of community anchor institutions to ensure that they are accessible by folks using screen reader technology, for example, or considering language updates and expansion. The 2 objectives within this goal that are not being considered relate to a project that we are running out of our office around a project called Digital Equity Specialist. And so those 2 objectives won't be covered because those will be direct opportunities for our counties and our tribes to participate in. So that's why those are not applicable. Then objective 4 is to increase telehealth access points and support health navigation services. So this one is really around looking at community anchor institutions and other locations where folks who might not have access to the internet at home can participate in telehealth appointments and have access to the devices and help necessary to do that. So an example of a program that might fall under this goal and objective might be a telehealth access point in a school or in a library where there's a private space available with high-speed internet and a computer with a really great camera attached to it, maybe a digital weigh scale or a pulse oximeter or other pieces of medical equipment that most people don't have at home available for people in the community to come and use if they would like to participate in a telehealth appointment. So that's just an example. Of course, you are welcome to interpret it the way that you would like. Moving on here to goal number 3, which is around providing digital literacy and skills training tailored to the needs of the covered populations. So this one is dedicated to the actual classes that folks can take, right? It acknowledges the role of digital literacy and empowering individuals to navigate and leverage digital technologies effectively. The goal is operationalized through increasing awareness and capacity of digital navigator programs, incorporating monitoring into intake forms so that we can track, efficacy of programs and numbers, of course, and enhancing support for organizations that offer digital skills trainings. So the objectives that are available within this goal are to increase digital literacy and skills training opportunities across the board. So providing digital literacy classes through community anchor institutions, for example, or other needs of the community. Objective 2 is around strengthening community support through digital navigation services. Digital navigators are trusted people within communities that that the community knows they can go to not only ask questions if they need help, but also get this type of skills training. And this is a proven model across the country, and we would like to support new and existing digital navigator services in the state. Objective 3 is around ensuring workforce development opportunities for people within the covered populations, especially to prepare them for jobs that may be created by the BEAD program. So when we think about the infrastructure investments, it's not only jobs for fiber layers and people who are out setting up those towers that will help connect people to the internet. We also consider the office positions, the billing and coding kind of positions, the customer service positions that might also require digital literacy skills training and opportunities to expand to folks who may be within those covered populations that haven't had that opportunity before. And then Objective 4, which is not applicable under this program, relates to another program that we had hoped to run through our office, establishing a digital literacy seal for graduating high school students, so that when they enter the workforce or go into college or other post-secondary education, they have these opportunities already under their belts. So that'll be one that we're working directly with partners, Department of Education, for example, et cetera. And so that one's not available for subgrants. Okay, let me read this question here. Given that applications are being scored against others addressing the same goals, are we required to pick one and only one for the application? Great question. So you can you can combine things, but you can also submit two separate applications. We'll kind of divvy it up. If it's something that addresses multiple parts and it makes sense to apply together all as one, you can do that. The pieces of the funding will be separated out though, or you could submit two separate applications. That would both be fine.
Aaron, I think there's one above that.
Oh, okay. So sorry.
Two up, that's okay, from Jeff.
Two up. I saw the note taker one and I thought that I wasn't missing one. Thank you for pointing that one out. Okay, sorry if I missed this. How would evaluation of a project be handled if our project addresses multiple? Okay, so kind of the same thing. So sorry, I missed it. I apologize. But I think we addressed it out of this. So two options. When we evaluate, we will be looking at that if it addresses more than one, but it's also possible to submit two. Okay. I think I got them all now. The other ones are note takers. Okay, fantastic.
Aaron, may I?
Yes. Oh, yes. Hi, Mikhail.
Hi. Sorry. I also asked on goal 3, objective 3. Can we use that to pay interns or part-time workers directly with this funding?
Yes. Keeping in mind that we have $16 million. A lot of times, staff time ends up costing a lot, right? But yes, you could pay a person with this funding. Same, with digital navigators, things like that. If their time is spent exclusively on addressing the goal and objective, then that can be factored into the application.
And there's another one in there on the same topic from Andrew.
Just saw that. Okay, to clarify, if applying under goal 3, does workforce development have to specifically be related to careers in the digital space? So that's a great question. So this funding is federally mandated to help us implement our digital equity plan. So anything that gets funded has to directly relate to the goals and objectives within the plan. Does that help? Okay. Let me know if you need more clarification on that. Okay. All right, the last two are less wordy, so I'm gonna start on those two. Goal 4 is really around safety and security. This includes, cybersecurity and knowing how to stay safe online. So the objective within that one is to develop a statewide online safety campaign for individuals of all ages. And of course, again, tying it to the needs of the covered populations, as all of them are. So, we'd be looking for maybe an organization who could, help us with some public service announcements around how to stay safe online. It could also be a coordinated effort to share around digital literacy upskilling opportunities. It could be a set of curriculum to teach people within the various covered populations about staying safe online, things like that. And then goal 5 is to ensure that Arizonans have affordable devices that meet their needs. So this one, is really down to device access and availability. So we would hope that projects within this one would increase the availability and affordability of internet-enabled devices. And again, that meet the needs of the user. That is to say, not everyone needs, a top-of-the-line gaming computer, right? So identifying various types of devices that meet different types of users' needs. A program or project within this one could be around a device distribution event, or even coordinating a learn to earn sort of situation where folks participate in digital literacy upskilling opportunities, and then are given a device at the end. And I will also just note this because in case it isn't clear, we're not necessarily funding one project per objective, right? So we could get a bunch of different applications that all get funded that relate to any one of these objectives. We have the funding available, and our goal is to meet these goals and objectives. So it's not one organization for each goal, for example. It could be multiple organizations, multiple applications for each goal. Okay. All right, so I am going to go ahead and stop my share so that I can more easily see everyone and see those questions as they come in. Are there other questions that I can answer at this time? And also, we have a couple other points that have come up in between sessions that I just want to address, which might also help folks with questions that they might be thinking about. So let me bring up this document here. So these are a couple of general questions that I've had, either come in to me directly in between sessions, or have come up in other conversations that I wanted to make sure were clear. One person has asked me if there is a page or word count limit for any section of the application, and acknowledging that they want to be concise, but they want to make sure that they have the space they need to describe what they want to do. And the answer to that is there is no page or word count limit. When you see the application, you will notice that it's just a PDF of a Word document, and so you can use whatever space you need to provide the information that you want to share with us. Another question, how does this funding account for indirect costs? This specifically came from a university, and their question was around if they should incorporate them directly into the budget, or does ACA pay those out as a separate amount? And the answer to that is that all funding for these requests is paid out of this grant. So we do need you to show the full cost of a project in your proposal. If it's not included in the application, it won't be eligible for grant reimbursement. Another follow-up question to that was around the caps on indirect costs. The question says, does this grant impose a cap on indirect costs lower than our negotiated rate? Some agencies limit indirect costs to a 10 or 15% indirect cost rate, for example. And the answer to this is the ACA will allow indirect costs up to 15% if a subrecipient does not have a negotiated NCRA. If the subrecipient has a current NCRA, the ACA will accept it. If a subrecipient elects to utilize a lower rate, for example, to allow for higher programmatic budget, that is at their own discretion, but you must note that in the budget. And then lastly, do the digital equity subgrant applicants need to do the pre-registration on the State Broadband Office's website? And the answer for that is no. The pre-registration information that you may see on our website is related to the BEAD program. That's the infrastructure investment side of things, and is not part of the digital equity subgrant application. And I see we have another new one in the chat here. So can you talk about the specific submittal process? Yes, I would be happy to. So when you go to our website, as I mentioned, you'll see a PDF with the questions and the information that we need as part of the application. Once you've compiled all of that information, you'll send that document that you've created to the email address digitalequity@azcommerce.com. You can send it as a PDF or a Word document, whatever you'd like, and just attach to that email. And then once the window closes, we will review all of the applications that we receive. And the next question, this is reimbursable, right? So the answer is yes, with this caveat. We will be drawing down funds as they're requested from us. The piece that we're still waiting for final guidance on is how strict that drawdown is. It's usually a 30-day time period, reimbursable. So you would do the work for the project, send us your invoice effectively. We would draw down that funding and provide it back. However, there have been a lot of questions, both from us here in Arizona as well as nationally, acknowledging the fact that some of the organizations who might be applying for these grants are doing brand new work that needs funding to get going, right? And so we are waiting for final guidance from the federal government on whether or not we could request funding that would be immediately spent instead of having it already be spent and you're getting a reimbursement, if that makes sense. So right now we are hopeful that if a subgrantee can prove the immediate need for the funding to do the work, for example, purchasing a set of laptops to take out, for digital literacy training, let's say, you'd have to do that before the work actually happened. We are anticipating that type of request would be allowable, if that's helpful. Okay, let's see. Can you review decisioning and funding timelines? Okay, so decisioning, I'm assuming you are referring to the evaluation of the applications. So we have a set of guidelines that are being developed for our panel to review based on. You will see the the information that we request. That is basically aligning the best use of the funding for what's being done. Okay. And then once those decisions are made, we will have a provisional award conversation with those organizations. So we'll let you know that your grant is recommended for award. But again, I do have to compile all of that and send it back to the federal government for one final check before official contracts are signed and things like that. And that's before the work can get started as well. So I don't have an exact timeline on that piece. I hope that if we have that information back to the federal government by the end of September, which is when it's due, that we would know the final decision by the end of the calendar year, but I can't guarantee that right now. We don't have an exact timeline based on our previous experience applying for this grant and the back and forth that happened, for those applications. It could take a few months before we have that final sign off from the federal government, though. So all of that to say, it is likely that the final approvals for these grants and those final contracts would not be completed before the end of this calendar year. Okay, let me see here. Would college or trade school preparation workshops for rural communities qualify with students attending a certain number of classes, receiving a tablet to take with them to school? That's a great question. So the important piece here, again, is that the funding needs to go towards the implementation or the starting, the completion of the goals and objectives in the plan. So if that class, for example, directly related to the goals and or objectives of the plan, then that would be a possibility, but it would have to be tied directly to the goals and objectives in the plan. Okay. What will reporting look like through the project period, monthly, quarterly, etc.? That is another great question, and I'm actually going to pop the website back up into my shared screen here momentarily to show you that answer. All right, I have clicked share. You should be able to see the general subgrant program tab now, right? Yes, awesome. So when I click in here to download the application, as I mentioned, you get this PDF of the application. And actually, if we scroll past the actual application part, sorry for the motion sickness that I'm sure I'm giving you right now, we do have our reporting requirements within this document as well. So I would encourage you to review this. Basically, we're going to set up a cadence between us and you, right? So between me as the program manager and the applicant, and then we're going to kind of base it on the proposed project's length, right? But we will meet no less than quarterly. And that reporting will be required at that time. So each quarter, and basically that gets us ahead of the schedule that I need to report back to the federal government on. So you're helping me get my T's crossed and my I's dotted. At that time, we will ask the applicants to provide this information as a report. So you'll be telling us who you are, what your project or program was, which goal and objective you're aligning with, information around, for example, the number of programs offered or delivery methods, and if anything has changed from your application, sharing with us any learnings that you've had. And then really important piece of this is tying it back to the number of people within the covered populations that your project or program is serving. So it will literally be a tracker, right, of the folks that you're helping. Then we also ask about our outreach efforts. This goes back to that stakeholder engagement piece of the requirements. And then, of course, the financial reporting. So what your total award was, the amount that you've requested, how you've used that funds as a narrative, and then the remaining amount within your award. So hopefully that's helpful. And this is all within that, that document for your reference. I'm going to stop share so I can see this again here. Okay. If we submit 2 projects, can we copy and paste certain text from each? For example, program background info, or would that be penalized? No, it would not be. Your organization and the work that you're doing is the same, so that would be perfectly fine. Okay, making sure I'm scrolling back through. I don't think I've missed any, but please yell at me if you think I have. Okay. So far, so good. All right. Well, I'm just noticing the time. Happy to continue, answering any questions, but we are coming almost up to the top of the hour. So I just wanted to acknowledge that for folks who might have something else going on this afternoon. But as we wait to see if any other questions come in, I just wanted to say thank you for attending today's session. And we hope that it has been helpful. Again, we will collect all of the questions that were asked in the chat and acknowledged verbally, and we'll track all of that and add it to the page where we add the recording. And feel free to let me know if you have any questions outside of this. And I really look forward to seeing applications from as many of you as possible. And thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Presentation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for the hearts. I love those. Thank you. Thank you.